Mercedes couldn't win the United States Grand Prix, yet something about its car still managed to be the weekend's biggest talking point. Footage from the previous race in Turkey showed the W12's rear end sinking rather dramatically as it travelled down the straight. It was the subject of a lot of interest in America and among fans watching around the world, but Max Verstappen's victory a couple of days later ended Mercedes' mini run of having the fastest car and proved this rear suspension trick is not quite the magic bullet some might have assumed. But it has proven to be a very useful tool, so we're going to explain exactly what it is you're seeing and how it works. After the Turkish Grand Prix, rival team boss Christian Horner said Red Bull can't get near Mercedes on straight line speed and said it was surprising to see an apparent performance step from its power unit. That triggered various theories about where the extra speed had come from. In Turkey, Lewis Hamilton had a fresh internal combustion engine as Mercedes has been battling engine issues with its V6. So one theory was Mercedes was getting significantly more performance from a new power unit before its output steadily degraded. There has also been speculation Mercedes had identified and addressed some potential leaks within its power unit that had been depleting its performance levels and causing the reliability issues that have dogged the manufacturer since the summer break. But Mercedes has little time for such rumours. When it was put to him by Sky Sports F1 that its engine problem was something to do with air valves deep in the engine, Wolff replied, "You're being fed with a lot of bullshit." But the questions are interesting. The focus on the power unit appears to be a red herring, and even Red Bull's tune changed at the United States Grand Prix. Horner instead turned the spotlight on how Mercedes has found a way to manipulate the performance of the rear of the car on the straights and reduce its drag levels. Footage of the Mercedes from Istanbul showed how much the rear was compressing at high speed. And during practice in the US, Horner even referred to a system Mercedes is activating now and how it's been able to drop the rear ride height so significantly. Wolff referred to the speculation as great stories and great narrative, but he did hint at a specific effort to maximise the car's aero efficiency when he said that trying to work the rear suspension in a certain way is not a new practice in Formula 1. And he went on to argue that Mercedes has been able to understand how to hit the sweet spot of the car in terms of its setup. The backdrop to all of this is that Mercedes started the year with a straight line speed edge before Red Bull looked superior in France and Austria. Since then, Mercedes seems to have re-established its advantage, and it had the fastest car overall in Italy, Russia and Turkey. Part of that apparent shift in the competitive dynamic has been Mercedes introducing a new aerodynamic package at the British Grand Prix in July. Its optimised suspension system seems to have arrived in line with that upgrade. Wolff suggested it had taken some time to maximise the efficiency of that package, but that the most recent races had proven that Mercedes has found a breakthrough. Wolff said, "What I enjoy watching is the intellectual process in the team around how to hit the sweet spot. Obviously, we've introduced that upgrade at Silverstone and since then have comprehended every race a little bit better how to extract the maximum performance. Since Sochi, then in Turkey and also here, it proves to definitely be the right path." So where does Mercedes dropping the rear ride height on the straights fit into this? Fortunately, we have easy access to a former F1 technical director to help us explain. The race's technical expert, Gary Anderson, has studied the evidence and pieced together what appears to be happening. But before we pass it on, we need to say thank you for making it this far. Your support makes it possible for us to make videos like this one. Chances are that you're watching this and you're not subscribed to the channel. If that's the case and you don't want to miss out on any of our videos in the future, you can hit the big red button and turn on notifications to change that. That way you'll always see our videos as soon as they're published and never miss something that we hope you're going to really enjoy. But let's get into Gary Anderson's analysis of what Mercedes is doing. As the rear diffuser of an F1 car gets closer to the ground, the airflow passing under the main flat part of the floor can't move fast enough through there to feed the diffuser properly. This means the airflow stalls and the car loses downforce and therefore drag, which is very handy on the straights. Optimising this effect comes with the additional advantage of being able to run more rear wing, which means more grip through the corners but still with the straight line speed you need because the diffuser stalls. That makes it a common objective. The reason this is of particular value to Mercedes is that along with Aston Martin, it has one of the two low-rake cars on the grid. That means the rear of the car is already closer to the ground and makes it easier to achieve the stall we're talking about. Mercedes' Silverstone upgrade is relevant to what the team's trying to achieve with its rear suspension trick because it made the front corners of the underfloor work harder, and Mercedes can make use of that to get to the critical point of making the diffuser stall just that bit earlier. But the behaviour of the suspension itself is key. In simple terms, the rear suspension of a Formula 1 car has a spring for each corner, and then there's a central heave spring that links those two corners. So when the car goes round a left-hander, the right side rear suspension will be in compression while the left side will extend. And for a right-hander, the left side's in compression and the right's extending. And when the car is going down the straight, both of those suspension linkages are compressing, and because they're going in the same direction, the third spring is compressing as well. What you need to know is that the downforce produced rises at the square of the speed, meaning that if you double the speed, you quadruple the downforce. So as the car goes faster and faster, the load builds on the rear suspension assembly, and because of the geometry of the linkages driving the third spring, that linkage can go over centre. In these conditions, the third spring reduces in its rate of compression and in turn support. So as it's holding the car up on the straights, this means the rear will drop down. When the driver hits the brakes, the rear of the car will rise and the diffuser airflow will reattach, producing the downforce required for braking stability and corner balance. The metaphor Gary Anderson likes to use is the gas struts on the rear tailgate of your car. When you open it, there's initially resistance, but then the gas strut takes over and lifts it. And when you close it, you're initially pushing against it before it goes light and closes easily. That's because the geometry of the gas strut goes over centre, and when it does this, it offers much lower resistance and allows you to close the tailgate. In principle, that's exactly the same as the Mercedes rear suspension. The key to optimising this suspension effect is to make it happen at the right speeds for the track configuration. It's critical for each circuit to identify the linkage geometry and when it would go over centre, so it only happens when you need it to. The last thing you want is for the diffuser to be stalling through a high-speed corner. So that potentially reduced the effectiveness of this system for Mercedes in America, given the high-speed sweeps of the first sector, where you need the third spring to work as normal to support the car. Unsurprisingly, one of the questions that has cropped up since this became such a big topic is how it can be legal. If the rear suspension is being used for aerodynamic benefit, that could be illegal under the often referred to ban on movable aero devices. But in this case it isn't. Article 3.8 of the technical regulations defines this rule in terms of prohibiting bodywork moving in relation to the car. While there are cases in the past of mechanical devices being declared illegal because of their aerodynamic effect, this is all about the characteristics of the suspension system. As was established in the case that declared the Mercedes DAS device legal when it was challenged by Red Bull at the start of 2020, what matters is that everything Mercedes is doing is within the suspension system. There's nothing illegal about having characteristics of both the geometry and the third spring that has this effect, even though it moves the car. As the primary purpose of the suspension system and the third spring is not aerodynamic, there's no question that it's legal. And Red Bull has subsequently admitted that. This is a mechanical system that is entirely the consequence of the geometry and characteristics of the suspension, and doesn't require any hydraulic or electronic actuation. An F1 car will move downwards under increasing load, and this movement is simply a result of that. What would be illegal is if there's an independent system creating that effect. You might be wondering why Red Bull isn't just copying the system it's observed, given it's legal and theoretically so effective. But Red Bull runs high rake, so for it to get its car close enough to the ground to make the diffuser stall to the same extent would require a complete change in aerodynamic philosophy. And at this stage of the season, that isn't going to happen. We hope this video has been as useful for you to understand Mercedes' clever suspension as it was when we first had it explained to us. So leave us with a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and if you'd like more technical insight from Gary Anderson in the future, just let us know in the comments and leave some suggestions on what you'd like him and us to dig into.